Welcome to our continuing webcast series. Today's presentation is Enhancing the Deltek Enterprise Project Management Environment with TimeControl and how to integrate Open Plan and Cobra with Enterprise Timesheet Management. My name is Chris Vandersloot and I am the president of HMS Software. Just to give you a quick background of HMS, HMS has been around the enterprise project management industry since 1984, and the enterprise timesheet industry since 1984 as well, given our very first project was integrating enterprise timesheet management with enterprise project management. Over the years, we've worked with numerous project management players and have extensive experience in the Open Plan and Cobra world, as well as in Primavera and Microsoft. In 2007, HMS was named as a Deltek independent software vendor partner and continues our long-standing relationship with the Open Plan and Cobra families. HMS has been involved in numerous projects over the years. We've worked on aerospace projects like the CF-18 in Canada, on hydro projects like the Northern James Bay Hydro Work, advanced technology like the nuclear power plant refurbishing in Ontario, working on active projects like the light armored vehicle, currently in use in Afghanistan, and on utility projects like offshore oil platforms such as the Hibernia oil platform. Our extensive experience includes extremely large projects and very small projects, as well as information worker type projects, white collar IT, research and development, bioresearch, and so on. Okay, let's talk about timesheets for a moment. One of the challenges with timesheets is when we come to talk to an organization is, what exactly is it you mean by a timesheet? You would think it would be one simple conversation, but in fact not. There are many perspectives to timesheets. And one of the most common is to talk about time and attendance. Time and attendance systems are by far the most prolific kind of timesheets that we find in the market. These timesheets really determine, were you here today or were you not? If you were not, what were you doing? Were you off on some authorized absence? Or should we pay you or not for this day? Time and attendance systems typically integrate directly into human resources, as well as into payroll and other financial purposes that require time and attendance. The next most common kind of timesheet we would see would be for professionals, time and billing. So engineers, consultants, accountants, lawyers, these kinds of people need to track each hour that they work because they need to bill for their time in order to be able to make a living with that organization. So these systems really track what client were these hours done for, and enough of a description that we'd be able to justify the invoice later. In a project management world, we tend to talk about statusing systems. We have a task that had a certain amount of time planned for it. We've done actual hours against that task, and we'd like to know what the actual hours were compared to the original effort that had been planned to get some kind of variance planning. And finally, more and more common these days is the idea of government compliance and just good governance. That is to say, spending money where you said you would spend it, not spending more than you thought you should, and making sure that the effort that was available to be expended got put onto the kinds of tasks that were appropriate. There's also a huge movement towards being compliant with different government requirements for things like the Defense Contract Audit Agency, Sarbanes-Oxley, European work rules, and so on. Well, our view at HMS was that there must be some way to do one timesheet that would be able to fulfill all of those requirements. One front end where people would put in the data, and yet numerous ways to move the data from the back end to different kinds of systems as they would require. The most common thing that we see is we come into an organization and we find out, well, there's different project systems in place and there are different financial systems in place, and for one reason or another, there are multiple timesheet systems. No one does this by design, of course. No one wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I've got a great idea, we should have many different timesheet systems. But for each different need, there seems to be a unique requirement for different kind of functionality. So the finance people really need something that's going to integrate directly with payroll, or integrate directly with billing, or job costing, something very auditable. The people who are using certain project management systems, such as Open Plan or Microsoft Project, may need a timesheet that links directly to their system. There may be other unique requirements for billing or for internal accounting of other requirements. Sometimes human resources will have an additional system to be able to track just the time off. So it is not uncommon to come into an organization and find multiple timesheet systems at work, and in a worst case scenario, users who have to actually fill in more than one timesheet before they can get their work accomplished. TimeControl was really designed to be able to deploy a single timesheet to a wide range of users, something that would be acceptable to the end user because compliance is a huge challenge. So we want something that's easy to use. It's got to have a web-based interface, a browser-type interface. The functionality's got to be able to not present users with 100 different things to do, but only those things that are appropriate to what they need to do. And the system has got to be able to take an enormous amount of data, but only present to users the kind of data in the kind of formats that's relevant to the way that they work. Project people should be seeing data in a project format. Human resources people probably more interested in something in an employee format, and so on. The interface of TimeControl is also designed to be multilingual. End users can select the language that they want to work in, and the tools for actually modifying the interface's languages are built right into TimeControl, so administrators can add additional terminology or change the terminology of the system on their own. People also want to be able to view external data from other systems, whether those systems are financial systems or project systems like Open Plan or Cobra, right into TimeControl. These days, being able to get notifications or email updates of things that are critical, such as a missing timesheet or information about a particular process that should have been run, comes straight out of the TimeControl system. Now, for some users, they'd like to start with a blank timesheet and add in the different tasks that they've done. For other users, it's going to be more effective to pre-populate their timesheet with the tasks and projects that they were scheduled to work on. This means that they won't have to do as many lookups for different projects and tasks. TimeControl supports both of these. The home page of TimeControl is its own dashboard, and this again can be customized for different kinds of users. Executives may see one kind of dashboard, end users may see another kind of dashboard with different kinds of information on it that's relevant to their kind of work. And for people who are using collaborative tools like Microsoft SharePoint, TimeControl can put its interface directly into SharePoint now to present that as end users require. So TimeControl has its own interface. It can work inside of SharePoint, inside of other kinds of collaborative tools, or work on its own. The architecture, the underpinnings of the product are also very strong. We can work from as small as 10 users to as many as 100,000 users in a TimeControl environment. The system supports both Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle. There's also support for Sybase. The TimeControl Express edition, which is designed for smaller organizations of 100 people or less, uses Microsoft's SQL Express. And we have unlimited capacity for certain kinds of codes, things like the number of rates per employee or the number of projects and tasks per system, the number of lines per timesheet. None of these things are restricted. We also have expense management in TimeControl. So you can add, for each line item in your timesheet, you can add an unlimited number of lines of non-labor expenses. The security in the system is obviously critical. This is a core system. It may be tied directly to payroll or to other critical financial systems. So we have security that goes all the way down to the field level. Fields can be made visible or invisible or read-only or value hidden. Also, every label in the system can be redefined so that you can use your own terminology that's appropriate to the way that you do business. The timesheet data is completely auditable, as well as the movement of timesheet data. So as timesheets are approved or rejected and move forward or have changes, all of this information is part of the audit trail. As is the requirement for many such systems like this, you have to be able to adjust the way that the data looks. TimeControl allows an unlimited number of user-defined fields on every table in the system. Also, you can put validation against those tables so that automatic pop-up lists can be created. And these pop-up lists can come not just from TimeControl, but from external systems. For example, you may have an ERP, such as the Deltek ERP system, that has work codes for chargeable items. Well, on your charge list in TimeControl, you might want to have that list populate our pop-up list for possible charge code values. And so these kinds of integrations between systems are extremely straightforward to do. You can also have multiple overhead charge types, not just one or two. You can really create whatever kind of overhead charges that you wish to do. And if you have a very large organization or organization that works in multiple centers, or in centers that may be remote and don't have full-time internet connections, you can create satellite operations from TimeControl and bring that system together with all the data together in one place. One of the core functionalities, one of the core features of TimeControl is the approval structure. And HMS has something that we call the matrix approval process for labor actuals. This allows an unlimited number of validation rules to be applied, and then an unlimited number of hierarchical type approvals through the organizational structure, but then also allows project managers to be involved in that process to redistribute hours if they must without changing the totals that have already been approved by the supervisors. This kind of structure, and we'll show it to you in a diagram in a few moments, but this kind of structure allows for both the project managers and the organizational aspect of the organization to be part of the same approval process. Links to project management are one of the things about TimeControl that makes it unique. We have alliances with Deltek to be able to link to Deltek's Open Plan and Cobra. We have links with other project management vendors like Primavera and Microsoft. And TimeControl includes direct links to these systems. Our relationship with the Open Plan family stretches all the way back to 1984 when we first got started. HMS Software has worked with Open Plan and with Cobra really since their creation, and we have done extensive numbers of deployments with TimeControl and Open Plan. Project management data can now be integrated on an on-demand basis or on a scheduled basis with the TimeControl scheduling service to be able to move data back and forth on a regular basis without any human intervention. Also, if you have different versions of Open Plan or versions of Open Plan plus other project management tools, TimeControl can support these tools simultaneously. So you may have a couple of projects, say in Microsoft Project, where the bulk of your data is in Open Plan, yet TimeControl can present to an end user a single timesheet, even though the source data for those charges are coming from different systems. Or we might have one department using one version of Open Plan, another department using another version of Open Plan. Both of these can be supported directly. As far as linking to finance systems goes, we've created a module that allows end users or administrators to create that link directly to the ERP finance system. And this allows really virtually any finance ERP system to be supported. That includes things like SAP and Oracle, of course, as well as other kinds of ERPs such as Deltek or Microsoft Dynamics. Okay, let's get right to a demonstration. Okay, well, this is TimeControl 5, and we're going to spend a few minutes in here just giving you a bit of an overview of the product. We've logged in as Joe Gardner, and you can see that up here at the top of the screen. Joe is an administrator here in TimeControl, so he's seeing the complete possible selection of menus. But the first thing that you notice when you log in is that Joe is presented with his own dashboard, his own homepage. And this homepage can be configured by the administrator or by Joe himself, if he's been given permission to do so, to display the information that may be particularly appropriate to his kind of employee or to him directly. All right, let's go and take a look at a couple of aspects of the product. We're going to start with the timesheet. So I'm going to go right into the timesheet list here. You can see that Joe has several timesheets under his control. He's got a couple here by Eric Vincent, and he's got a couple of his own. And we'll just go create a new one. We're given the next logical date for that timesheet, but we can also copy it from a previous timesheet if we just want to say just like last week or just like a previous time. In Joe's case, we've pre-populated the timesheet. This is an option that is available to us and set by the administrator to say, should this employee have his timesheet pre-populated by the charge codes that he was expected to do. And this can be turned on or off. For some employees, it won't be appropriate, and for others, it might. And now Joe is presented with a possible list of information that was on his expected list. You can also see down at the bottom of this list, the internal project really lists something that's not a project. That's general meetings, and so this too can be established in our pre-populated list. Entering time is really very simple, and I'm just going to go and enter a little bit of time at random. And, well, we'll go and change that one. And we go. And you can see sometimes the time control refreshes the screen when we change to a new project. So, here we have, in fact, we'll have to just round this out now to make a complete timesheet. All right, close enough. So now we have a timesheet that's been entered, but we can also add additional lines to that timesheet simply by saying, give me a new line. And if I get that, then I can say, well, show me a list of possible projects. And now we see the projects that are appropriate to Joe. And we can pick one of those projects and say, yes, we did work on that project. And then we see the charge list, and it may not be the complete charge list. Maybe only those projects that are available to Joe. And you can see that they're displayed hierarchically. So we can display an enormous amount of data here in a very small amount of space. And I'm just going to go in there we go, and we're going to add just one line there. So we'll apply that to say there's our completed timesheet. Now, Joe can go on to add additional information. He can add charge notes. He can see some information from the charge table. He can look at information from the project management system, which we wouldn't see for internal, but we might see for other tasks. He can even use a little worksheet to say, give me a sum by project, or show my vacation sick leave for this year to date. We can see that Joe hasn't taken any of personal time or sick time or vacation time. But just like the dashboard that showed this information, Joe can see this on the fly. In addition, for each line of the timesheet, we can enter in unlimited lines of expense report items. And so we can add not only labor, but non-labor costs here as well. But in the end, there's not really much for Joe to do except, all right, I want to send this timesheet off for approval. Now, at the top of this page, we've seen some information that's very pertinent to this timesheet. First of all, we see who the owner is. That's Joe G. That's Joe Gardner. And we can see where it's going next. Well, Joe is an administrator, so where it's going next is to posting. But if it was going to a supervisor, then we would see that username right here in releasing to. We know the source of this information. We know its status. It's a draft timesheet. And we know both the employee and how this person is represented in a project management system. In fact, if we scroll to the right here a little bit, you can see we have our totals for each line item, but also we have a place to put our estimate to complete. That's information that could optionally be sent back to the project management system. So estimate to complete for each of these tasks. And then on the far right, we have the audit trail of who entered that line item in this timesheet. So if we go to send this information off for approval, yes, we want to release this to posting. That's where it's going next. You can see that things have changed here a little bit. In fact, we're not able to edit this information. If I right-click on it, I can't insert or append. All of these buttons have been grayed out. That's because the control of this timesheet has changed. You take a look up here, you can see the owner is now posting. The last owner was Joe G. The status is now approved, and the source is the same. The date, the week ending date for this information is the same. But this timesheet has definitely changed ownership. So this is the way that we go through that vertical aspect of approval, the organizational aspect of approval, going up hierarchically through the organization. A lot of what we've seen now has been based on tables, and so I want to just touch on a little bit of that. First of all, there's a number of tables that control how time control will look. And we create these tables so that we are able to control the information in the back end to work on with various legacy systems, whether that's project management or finance systems, but also so that the end user doesn't need to spend a lot of time answering questions for us in the front. So we know where this person's department is because we've made a field for it. These are user-defined fields, and you can see there's a lot of room here. You can put as many fields against this table as you wish, and you can attach those fields to be linked to drop-down lists so that this information could come from inside TimeControl or elsewhere. In addition, we can do things like set defaults. We can set filters here for this employee. And you can see we're looking at Jane Carpenter's information. The way that Jane's timesheet would go is from Jane to her supervisor, Tom Logan, and then to posting. If we look at Joseph Gardner's information, you can see Joseph releases directly to posting, which is what we just experienced. There's additional information such as free-form notes, and we can even see an audit trail of changes to this table over time. Now, I want to talk about a couple of other tables because they're quite relevant to the overall system. First of all, one of the simplest tables is the labor rates table. And this allows us to have an unlimited number of rate codes per employee or per resource or globally. And that becomes very important when we look at this. If we look at Joe Gardner's information here. we can see that there's a rate here, just one at least for Joe Gardner. That's his standard rate, and you can see that we have an internal cost and a billing cost for that rate code. Well, we could have as many rate codes like this as we want. Perhaps we would have one rate code for each client, which would have a different billing rate, but at the same internal rate. Or perhaps we would have one rate code for regular time, another one for overtime. We could even have unbillable overtime, or we could have unpaid overtime, which we would bank. The rate table, while it looks very simple, gives us a tremendous amount of ability to be able to categorize this information. We could also tag this information to say, well, what currency is this rate actually listed in? So if we have a multinational organization, we can say, well, this currency is in yen, and this other currency is actually listed in dollars, and then use back-end commands to be able to do translation, if we wanted, of those currencies into a common currency. When we make connections to a project management system, we have to do a couple of things, and these are also listed in the tables. First of all, the connection pool determines what data sources we can actually connect to simultaneously from this version of TimeControl. And you can see we have several in this demonstration data. We have some Microsoft projects, some Primavera, and some Open Plan information. In this case, we have a couple of different ways to connect to Open Plan. We can go with the old OLE method, or directly connect to one of the Open Plan 3 series databases, again through the Open Plan client. Once we've created that, we have the Open Plan OLE connection. A couple of things about it. First of all, it's saying, well, what's that link interface? And we're going to find that in another table down here under links. So let's bring that up just to take a look at. The interface definition will actually determine what fields will be mapped between the project management system, in this case Open Plan, and TimeControl. So in this case, you can see we have the WBS tied to the C1 field, the code 1 field, and we have a couple of other user-defined fields here, which we've tied directly into our user-defined fields. If you look a little bit lower, you can see we have cost account 1, 2, and 3, work package, and milestone fields. These are clearly Cobra fields, and that's what these additional, the ability to add Cobra fields to link to, allows us to make that three-corner integration between Open Plan, Cobra, and TimeControl. So we have the list of fields, and we can have as many of these as we need. We tie that then to the connection pool, which says where is the data we're going to tie to. And finally, we actually connect that to a TimeControl project. This is all typically done one time per project, or one time in the configuration of the system, to say how are we going to link these systems together. So you can see here we have a clean project. That's one of the Open Plan demonstration data projects. And in the transfer options, it said, well, what link interface are you going to use? Well, that Open Plan OLE we just saw in the connection pool. Is this just for import or import and export? No, we're going to go both ways. And we can also determine here to say what level would you like to connect your data at? Because TimeControl will allow an integration with Open Plan where you can work at a more of a summary level than the project schedule is. So I might say bring information in only to level 2. Or I might say bring information in at the detail level, and we'll summarize to go summary back to TimeControl or to the summary in Open Plan. Either way, we can have more detail in Open Plan or less detail in Open Plan than we have in TimeControl. Now, once this is set up in configuration, we can actually bring information in directly from Open Plan. So we're going to do that right here in this presentation. I'm going to bring in information on demand. I could also create a schedule for it, but in this case I'm going to say, no, this is something I want to run right now. And I have a list of those projects. There's the clean project we've defined. I'm also going to say bring in the resource information. And we're going to ask it to go out and find this Open Plan information, to open up that clean project from Open Plan, and to bring that information directly over into TimeControl while we watch. And we can see that information is being brought over from Open Plan right now. So it brings over activity information as TimeControl charges, brings over the resource information into our resource pool, but also the assignment information so that we can see which tasks are associated to which resources. And that allows us to be able to do that pre-populated timesheet that we saw a few moments ago. And when this is finished, we'll get a short log saying whether it was successful or not, or if there was any problem with it. It processes those charges and tasks and makes sure that everything was brought into the system as it should be. And you can see that we have a log, and if we go down to the bottom, it says successfully completed. That's what we needed to know. If we go right back to the charge list now, this charge table now has been populated from this project. And I'll just expand that out a little bit to see it better. You can see that this is now all hierarchically listed, just as it would be from Open Plan, with information that has come from the Open Plan schedule, including early, late, scheduled dates, constraint dates. We have all kinds of information that's come straight out of the system. Okay, let's scroll down and show you a couple of other things about the control of the system. What we've been looking at has all really been determined by the user profile area. User profile defines what information should be displayed to the end user, what menu information is available, and what kind of access the end user will get. So we control that in a couple of different ways. First of all, by menu, to say, well, what menus should be available to you to see, and we can make those invisible simply by clicking on them. The same thing for reports. What reports should be available for you to take a look at? And even down to the field level, where we can go right down to a field and say, should we be able to display or not information on information available for you in any of the areas of time control. Now, that's just the display, really, and functionality of the system. But we also have control to be able to say, well, what kind of data should you be allowed to get access to? Should end users be restricted only to their own data? Perhaps they can run reports, but only on their own tasks. So you can really define what people can see and how they're able to access the system. Even down to accessing things like table security, to say, well, for each of the tables in time control, well, administrators are able to change the structure, but we wouldn't expect that supervisors would be allowed to change the structure, so that those rights aren't there. One of the other very important aspects in the system are the validation rules. Now, we've talked about that in a moment, and we're going to show it to you graphically in just another minute or two. But in the meantime, information for validation rules is determined first from the filters. And filters are used for numerous purposes in time control. We can make filters, for example, for a report. In this case, a report that will have a filter called when was the date when was the work performed? What date was the work performed on? And we can see that it's going to ask for prompts. Then there's a little brackets here that says when you run the report, ask for those dates. Validation rule filters can be very simple. In this case, something very straightforward, like no more than 24 hours in a single day of work. And so you can take a look at that filter and say, well, it's very straightforward, I think. In the background, we're always generating the actual SQL for that filter. And we do that because in time control, you could actually create a filter that would be too complex for us to define in a menu. It might actually reach outside of time control to validate data in some other system, such as the human resources system or finance. And so SQL can be created here in order to be able to create rather complex validation rules. And then validation rules themselves are very straightforward. If I take a look at just a single validation rule, for example, no more than 24 hours in a day, well, first we say what timesheets are we going to check? And then, what is the rule that we're going to check for? No more than 24 hours a day. If that's not true, then that should be an error, and we want to create a message which says you cannot charge more than 24 hours in a single day. At the point where you release your timesheet, you're going to see that error. And so that means that data that arrives into time control is already very, very high quality. Now, there's a lot more to the system, but I really wanted to go back to what happens once data is in the system, and I'm going to take a look at that in a couple of ways. First of all, the ability to look at reports. And reports in time control, there are already some pre-canned reports, but you can use the report wizard to create your own. If we run one of the existing reports just on the fly, we're going to get a list of possible filters. We're going to say, in this case, don't bother. We just want to take a look at one. And you can see that reports look very much like a spreadsheet. In fact, they're so much like a spreadsheet that I can go right into that grid and say, here's a spreadsheet based on multiple currencies, and call that perhaps the Canadian dollar. So there's a two-currency report. In fact, we should make that look perhaps a little bit more like currency, and we can do that simply by saying, there we go, there's our two-currency report. And in fact, this is so much like Excel that we can actually go out and say, I would like to save this information as Excel. And that's the most common way that time control reports are saved and distributed around the company. Now we're looking at data as a pre-canned report, but we can also take a look at information in an ad hoc type of query. And we do that with the drill down analyzer. The drill down analyzer allows us to make several selections of data, perhaps to use a certain filter, and then to say, right, well, we've given ourselves a bit of data there to look at. But because this information has all kinds of fields in there, and you've defined what fields are going to be in that system, I can actually start summarizing it just by dragging a column up to the next to this sorting area. So now I've said sort everything by project name, and you can see we now have summaries here by project name. So the data project has a total of 59 hours and 30 minutes for this period. In fact, if I want to do something even more complex, I can say show it to me by the week as well. And so now I have by project by week. In fact, if I just drag that to the right, now I have it by week by project. So this is the kind of tool that's very handy for administrators, where management might say, can you tell us in the last 3 months, for example, how many hours have been spent on corporate meetings versus project meetings? Perhaps this is not the kind of report that you have already pre-organized, but by looking in the drill down analyzer, we can see that information directly. And once we see it, we can then send that information out as an XML file or as an Excel file for further analysis, and so that you can use it in the way that you want. So TimeControl, really designed as an easy-to-use system for the end user. The end user sees perhaps only the timesheet and the ability to look at their own report. But for administrators, a tremendous amount of flexibility to see data, see where that data is at any time, report on that data, and then send the information back to the project management system that it came from. So we're going to head back to the slides now and see if we can wrap up. Okay, let's begin to wrap things up here. The matrix approval process for labor actuals, we've shown you a little bit about approvals, but this is really how the whole structure of that system works. We start from a scheduling system like Deltek's EPM system, Open Plan, even information in from Cobra. These two systems, of course, can be linked to each other. And then we bring in, either on a scheduled basis or on demand, information from those systems to populate the time control tables, all so the end users can do their timesheets. Now, end users don't have a whole lot of interest in anything we've talked about so far, because end users really want to get into the system and out of the system as quickly as is humanly possible. End users will see the system at the end of their working day or perhaps the end of their working week. Really, to get compliance from end users, we don't expect to make them happy, but we need to make them the least unhappy possible. So we pre-populate all this information so that end users have less questions to answer, will have to spend less time in the system, hopefully can just plug in their hours and spend about 5 minutes in the timesheet before heading home for the day. Once the timesheet is completed, we can then use our automated validation rules to check for anything that we've created a rule for. No more than 24 hours in a day, no sick leave on weekends, but also perhaps no overtime unless you're a wage employee who gets overtime, and you're somebody who has done at least 40 hours of regular time this week already. We can then also, aside from the automated validation rules, have as many levels of human validation as we require. Although with the controls already in TimeControl, it's unusual to see a lot of different levels of approval. Once we've completed that, we can post that timesheet. We know that the totals are then locked down. We can send information off to the finance system, whether that's to Cobra or to the ERP, because we know the totals are correct. And we still can give the project manager time to be able to look at that data and redistribute the hours without changing the totals. And we do that with the debit and credit function, which includes complete auditability of that data. So TimeControl and the Deltek Enterprise Project Management Systems really allows for a single timesheet to support the needs of not just the statusing of the project, but also any financial requirements that may be required on the rest of the organization. So both project and non-project people, for both project and non-project work, TimeControl can fulfill that timesheet requirement. And that gives you a better chance of having a single timesheet that is used for all of those purposes. Open Plan provides the scope in the planning system, Cobra provides the cost reporting, the earned value analysis, the earned value reporting, and TimeControl is really providing the auditable trail to the actual effort, to the labor actuals that become the source information for Open Plan, for Cobra, and for the ERP. HMS is represented all over the world. Our headquarters are in Canada, with offices in both Montreal and Toronto, and our actual corporate headquarters are in Montreal. But we have dealers and representatives with technical support and implementation specialists virtually everywhere. So if you are interested in the product and you want to talk to somebody more local, stop by the hmssoftware.ca website or the timecontrol.com website and ask to see a list of possible representatives and their contact information. We have clients virtually all over the industry. And so you can see several of them here. But if you're interested in more of a list of clients or clients from particular industries, please let us know so that we can show you some of that information. If you'd like to find out more about Time Control, the best place to start is at timecontrol.com. Or by talking to us about our services, you can find out about that at hms.ca. And if you're interested in getting a view of a hosted evaluation, or getting even better, an online demonstration of Time Control, a bit more focused to your industry and to your requirements, then please stop by and see us on the website or drop us an email at info@hmssoftware.ca. Thanks very much for your time today and looking at Time Control and how it links to the Deltek Enterprise Project Management family.